This is Warren Vanderhill interviewing Mark and Traci Greenberg, Muncie Jewish Oral History Project 2, January 30, 2003. I'd like to begin by thanking both of you for agreeing to participate in my project. And as with all the participants, I've begun with a question that probably is of more interest to me than it is to those who will be part of the larger study. And that is just to ask you why you came to Muncie, and if you might have had other options at the time you decided to come here.
Sure. My brother came to Ball State. He was 7 years older than myself. So the first time I came to Muncie was visiting him with my mother, and then making frequent trips from Northwest Indiana down here, for visits and that sort of thing. Then I spent time growing up in Northwest Indiana, and it was my turn to go to university. I came to Ball State, being somewhat familiar with it.
Okay. So education was the draw.
Education was right. But at the time, coming down here, I didn't really know yet what I was going to pursue once I was here. I had an idea it was going to be education, but what area, I didn't know. I spent some time at special ed, the hearing impaired department, and then switched that into secondary.
Okay.
And then really, you already spoke with Traci about...
They were not on tape.
Okay.
We were married in the summer of '88, and then that's why we came. But we didn't originally plan on staying here. That wasn't really in the plan. We would go out west.
Okay. What did you think of Muncie when you first came here from Northwest Indiana?
I thought...
You can chime in. This is back and forth.
I thought rural, no lakes, missed Lake Michigan.
Landlocked.
Okay.
We really missed the beach.
Yeah.
And more rural. We grew up like in this, around the mills and...
More urban.
Yeah.
And ethnic. I mean,
ethnic
QL might have been the closest thing to having anything other than a hamburger and fries that a person could get. But that's come a long way. I mean, in the last 10, 15 years.
Well, that's sort of the second part of the question. That now that you've been here for a while, have your views of the Muncie community changed?
Oh, yeah.
I've always liked it. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, just because it wasn't, it was more of a, I thought it was a farming community, but really it's not. And the more diverse that it is ethnic, I think that's a good thing. But when they didn't have it, I don't think that was I don't mean to paint a picture like it was a bad thing. It was just something.
We just missed those restaurants.
Yeah.
The lake.
But the people, I've always enjoyed the people.
I'm only laughing because I went to college in Holland, Michigan, and so I know what the Lake Michigan influence is. I'm a Great Lakes and Streams man myself, and around here the best thing I have to fish is a farm pond, or occasionally the White River when it's not a lot of runoff and things like that.
Yeah, and you notice the ethnicities gone when, we went to school with Fatusis, Kaczynskis, Wojciechowski. I mean...
Well, you grew up in multi-ethnic areas, as I did in New York
Yeah.
City, and you're right, when you come out here,
It's different.
there isn't any sense of ethnicity.
Yeah. Miss that,
How would you describe your lives as a member of a Jewish community before you came to Muncie?
Wasn't existent.
Yeah, really, the temple in Muncie was the first temple I ever really went into, because I didn't grow up Jewish.
Okay.
My mother's not Jewish, and my father didn't really practice. His father, my grandfather, wasn't really adamant about them. He had two boys. My uncle picked up the faith.
Okay.
I believe his first wife converted, but my mother didn't have any interest in converting because my father didn't have much of a Jewish identity religiously, really. So, growing up, we didn't observe Shabbat or holidays, I knew I had a Jewish identity somewhat. Ethnicity, but it wasn't like you would think. It's not typical. I mean, you look at all the families at Temple Bethel, and, this isn't there isn't anybody there that shares a similar history like that, Well, you're going to find generations of people,
They go back to grandparents and great-grandparents.
Absolutely. I just have one grandparent, and that's on my dad's side.
Okay, when you came here and you began to become part of the Temple Bethel community, as a result of that, how important is being part of the Jewish community to you now?
I would say very important.
Okay.
It was a very warm community. from the first times we started going, and I think I went pretty much by myself. Wasn't really any reason for that, but I kind of sought it out myself, and it was to belong to a community that shared similar views. Even though I wasn't raised Jewish, I had an identity and I had a thinking.
Okay.
So I kind of gravitated towards something that, and I've known about history and our own history.
Yeah.
So even though it wasn't quote unquote religious, there's still an identity there.
Okay. So I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's fair to say then that now, at this point in your life, as an individual and as a couple, as a family, that being part of the Temple Bethel community is pretty important?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tracy was walking around with the son, so she can comment on this a little bit if she wants to, but the question that I asked Mark was how important his life, and now in your case, your life, is as a member of this temple community. How would you comment on that? I mean, this is important to you?
Oh, yeah, very important.
Why?
Well, I think it wasn't as important until I think we had children too, and having.
Talk some more about that, because I get that from a lot of people I've interviewed. Why is that important in terms of the kids?
Actually, I was raised Catholic, and I converted in 2000, and we would take Jake when he was 2, 3. He loved going to the temple and services and singing, and I guess because Mark and I had such a warm feeling and about the faith and the community that we wanted to have that our children feel that way. And I think as Jake, he can express, and he did through the years, that he was getting that feeling, warm feeling too, and learning the faith and having a Jewish identity and feeling good about it. Does that make it sense?
Yeah, it does. So it's very important to both of you that your children be raised in this kind of religious community.
Yeah. And I think possibly not having it growing up, you're gonna have that. You're just kind of like laughing, you can say.
When you were growing up, I was asking, we want this for our children.
Okay. To switch a little bit, in the first study that I did of the community 23 years ago, I asked each of the participants to comment on relationships between Jewish and non-Jewish people in the community. And of course, for that generation, which I've kind of dubbed the Marty Schwartz generation to give you a historical perspective, those were really big issues, because there were places in Muncie where they could not live, there were clubs in Muncie that they could not belong to. Well, of course, all that's changed. But in this study, I just decided as a follow-up, I would ask all the participants, if you think today, 2003, January, if the relationships between Jewish and non-Jewish people in Muncie is really much of an issue anymore.
No, I don't see that. Now, I'm not a business person, so I wouldn't know if people, would avoid my place of business because I'm Jewish, or but to be as a firefighter, I definitely feel part of a group. The only time that I'm kind of reminded that I'm not part of the group is when they avoid putting pork in something. And even that I share with the guys. It's not that big a deal, because I try not to eat certain things, but I'm not that. It's not that adamant about it.
But it's never been a barrier to you as far as relationships with other people who are part of the fire department.
No. No.
I don't think it's been an issue either with me, but there's a difference in the sense of being a different faith here. And like people that I work with, they probably have never known anybody Jewish, or they'll say, oh, we didn't even know there was a Jewish temple here in Muncie. And so I think it isn't an issue, but how do I explain? I think people are curious because they've never known somebody that practiced Judaism, but not an issue in relationship.
Well, this is probably more for Mark, but I mean, have you experienced, either of you, any overt or covert anti-Semitism?
No, not. I can't say obvious. There might have been.
Mark, let me get here because you're in. You gotta stay back on my.
Mark is going after his son as we speak.
No, I've never really experienced anything obvious. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
I mean, you know.
How do you see the future of Temple Bethel?
I would like to think that when our boys are my age, that there'll still be a Temple Bethel located in the same place. But you know, being a member here now for roughly 10 years, you know, when you see older members passing away, and if there's families that come in to take the place, then you continue. But when the older members pass away and you don't have people to pick up or to belong, then that small community doesn't exist anymore. So that's an obvious concern.
How important to the Temple's future do you think that the addition to the building is?
Well, if I was looking at numbers and I looked at each year and I looked at the number of people that we have in a directory, I would say it was a good move to add on. I think I was one of the few, and may have been the only person that was opposed to building the addition.
There?
Yes.
Okay. Talk more about that.
Well, at times it's hard to take care of what you had, even though it was smaller.
Right.
That I didn't fool myself in thinking that once we added on that we wouldn't have the same problems, but just magnified because you have more of a building.
Oh.
And
so
with that are expensive.
More from the maintenance standpoint.
Sure, right.
So it wasn't a location so much.
Oh no. Yeah, because you'd like to see, and I think that area of Muncie is starting to come back and be a safer area. What it was in the 20s when it was built and what it was in the late 80s, it may have been close to night and day. I'm sure I'm not a real estate person, but you could see that real estate was somewhat changed through the years, But I think the neighborhood's making a comeback.
Okay. If you had a wish list and you could put, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 things that would be on a Mark Greenberg list to help ensure the future of the temple, what kind of things would you put on that list? What would be important to make this more of a vibrant, ongoing temple community?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that comes up almost in all the interviews, if you to sort of give you a hint. I get a lot of people, and I did 23 years ago, talking about the issue of having a full-time rabbi. And I just wonder how important you think that would be to the community.
Yeah, that definitely, and that along with a religious school that meets on a regular basis, that certainly helps. But I think probably the full-time rabbi, although with the cantor that we have, taking on more and more of that type of responsibility, there is an anchor, so to speak, there. And so, for example, if somebody becomes a bar mitzvah, we do have Larry there on a regular basis where when the student rabbi comes in, and Larry's busy maybe, they complement each other. Larry's always there, and the student rabbis come and go.
Right.
It hasn't always been like that.
No, I know.
They didn't have a cantor for many years.
No, I know.
So that really has been quite an asset for the community, I would think. I don't, again, Larry and I came in probably about the same time in the community, so I don't know what it was somebody that takes the ball and runs with it, takes that responsibility.
Well, what kinds of things, as you look at the temple community, do you think that a full-time rabbi would offer that perhaps isn't present in the total life of this religious community now?
And again, and maybe I don't know enough about the rabbi's responsibility, but I would think that a full-time rabbi would take care of well, or at least oversee like the religious school, for instance, and make sure that it's not just the Sunday 2 hours, every Sunday or every other Sunday. Yeah. But it very well, I mean, if you had enough of a community where you could go Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 or, whatnot. I'm not saying it's going to be like Indianapolis where you go all day. That'd be impossible. It's such a small community. But it certainly would be better for the young kids. Yeah. And even if I had the time, my gosh, I'd love to be able to learn the things and make up for lost time, Yeah. But I'm an adult and I'm 45 minutes to an hour late on the meeting and,
Well, because of your schedule.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just hard as an adult to try to make up for that.
Well, yeah, I think, it's funny you mentioned that because I think part of it is that you have young children and that sometimes makes the kind of scheduling you're talking about difficult. The other, however, is that one of the reasons why you and Tracy seem to be interested in having a really vibrant temple community is because of your kids. Mm-hmm. That you want them raised in that kind of community.
Right. Yeah. And it's twofold because on the other hand, as much as we would like to do more things with the temple, we find ourselves staying at home and observing Shabbat at home because it's approaching bedtime. Yeah. And that's, I think that's what's nice too, is that you don't feel like you have to go to the building. But I mean, that's community. There is something special about being there with other people that are doing the same thing you are.
Well, that's why I feel, from having done as much of this study now as I have, that the building edition is so important to the sense of community that seems to be present there now. That the people see the edition as really offering more opportunities for the community to gather, if you will, not just for religious purposes, but also for cultural purposes, for social purposes. And so a number of people have mentioned that as an important part of the building edition.
And it's been huge because exactly what you just said, that is actually played out. I mean, they're having more activities for the community.
Yeah. My working hypothesis for this study is that if there were no Ball State and if there were no Ball Memorial Hospital, there might not be a Temple Bethel. And given the number of people who are part of the university community and are part of the medical community, if you take all those people out of the temple, it doesn't leave a very large number of people. And so I'm asking each person who's participating in the study if they think that hypothesis has some validity.
Yes, because you remove those elements of Ball State and the hospital, and you'd be left with business people, which they're still there, but they're now moving away or unfortunately passing away. I mean that's how it goes. And you lose that element, that generation. And it's again, it gets us back to the future of Temple Bethel. You always have the university, you always have the hospital.
Yeah.
But I mean, you wonder about other communities how they do it.
But that's a big switch. I mean, when I did this study initially 23 years ago, the majority of the people I interviewed were business people. The majority of them had businesses downtown. Others like Marty Schwartz or Sam Dobrow had businesses that were out, but they were outside of downtown, but they were still business people.
Right.
And now what you had that really struck me when I looked at the temple directory for last year and this year, I mean, when I looked at the number of people who have been drawn here by both Ball State and the hospital, it's a pretty significant number of people. And it's had a lot of diversity in the congregation because they've come here from the East Coast or Chicago, the West Coast. And so the congregation now, even with you from Northwest Indiana, I mean, is a much more diverse congregation than it was 23 years ago.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. And I guess I hadn't thought about it. I haven't gone through the directory to see, maybe we didn't always have faculty members or hospital.
We didn't have as many.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what struck me is the number.
Okay.
And that you now have a greater number of people who have come here from various parts of the United States and who probably would not have come here if it had not been for opportunities offered by Ball State or offered by the hospital.
Well, I mean, both are grown. Both are, the hospital's grown, the university's grown.
They're the two largest employers in the community.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a specific question. Since you came to Ball State for educational reasons, and you've also done a master's degree, this is kind of a personal thing, it has nothing to do with the study, then how is it that you ended up with the fire department?
It was truly an accident.
Okay.
Traci was looking for a job for herself in the unemployment section of the paper. And it was in between my first and second year of grad school. And that's when I realized that teaching wasn't what I was going to do. Okay. And I remember sitting on the couch thinking, and she says out loud, now she wasn't looking for the job herself. She's just going through that section. She's reading things out loud. Yeah. She saw they're taking applications for the fire department. Now there's a job. Didn't know anything about. In fact, the only fire station I'd ever went to prior to that was in Chicago with her uncle, because he was in Chicago. The only fireman I ever knew. Yeah. Didn't know the work schedule. Didn't know really what they did. But I had some experience in different kind of blue-collar jobs. I'd worked in steel mills and was in the reserves of the Marine Corps, so I'd kind of gone through
real work.
Yeah, where I had an idea, Yeah. So it's 12 years later.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Traci is now back, and one of the questions that I asked Mark, I'd like to get your response to, is how you see the future of Temple Bethel. How do you view it, perhaps 10 years down the road? Or also, I've asked Mark to make a wish list. You could do that too. Yeah. What kinds of things might you put on a Traci Greenberg wish list to ensure the continuity of the temple?
Well, I think in the next 10 years, there's going to be probably how it has been in the last 10 years that we've been going. I think there's going to be families moving in and moving out because of maybe the doctors or university folks.
Right.
But hopefully we'll have. I just see the future as for our Jewish community is really for people to come through Ball State and the hospital.
Yeah. Well, you've anticipated, as I referred to it when I was speaking with Mark a few moments ago, my working hypothesis for this study is that if it were not for the university and the hospital, I'm not sure that there would be much of a there as far as the temple is concerned.
I don't know how realistic it is for Mark and I to think that our boys will stay in Muncie.
Well, if you want to use my children as an example, that actually has come up in some of the interviews. And I mean, since you know the person I'm going to mention, Sherry Kloss, one of my colleagues at the university, an amazingly talented woman, when that question came up in the conversation I had with her, she said, well, they should leave Muncie. They need to stretch their wings. They need to fly. And I would agree with that. I think that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or any additional perspectives that you might like to add? This is an opportunity for you to say anything you wish before we conclude our interview.
Well, I think that the temple's been a very important part of our life, Mark and I's life. I think and raising kids since they were babies and being part of that community, it's been like a wonderful addition to our life.
Yeah. Well, you made a lot of friends. It's funny.
A family.
Well, I'm into this enough, having now done, 15 or 16 interviews, that what happens to me is that other people mention the names of other people. And so you'll get people like Dana Narder and Ed Baruch, and I just happened to have done the interview with Dana in the last week or so.
Yeah.
And so you'll get people who will say, well, we've made a lot of friends outside of my other life, which in her case is a university, and these are friends who are part of Temple Bethel community. So I mean, that's really given me a feeling that this is a congregation with a lot of young people in it who have become very close.
Oh yeah, just like our son Jake, grew up with the, since Tyler's with Hirsch's and Semtovs, and and that's always going to be a link. They may not go to the same schools and always hang out, but there's always going to be that connection with the kids.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for participating in my study. I really appreciate it.